Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Let me begin with a little curious detail about our first reading today, which is actually the beginning of a new book. It is supposed to have been written by the same author who wrote Isaiah chapters 1 to 39. Yung binasa natin, chapter 40. That's why you might be wondering, but sabi ko, it's a new book. But you know, common sense tells us that it could not have been written by the same angry prophet who pronounced oracles of doom and judgment. Yung may akda ng 1 to 39, laging galit ang tono. But this one, hindi. And the original prophet Isaiah prophesied in the 8th century BC. So, why do I believe that this is a different author? Well, first of all, iba yung tono, like I told you already, from being judgmental to being hopeful. But more importantly, the historical events that he is talking about happened 2 centuries later. Ang haba ng pagitan. The end of the Babylonian exile. The end of the captivity of the Jewish people under the Babylonians. Ngayon, the modern day Iraqis. The original prophet Isaiah could not have lived for more than 200 years. Kaya some Bible scholars suggest that it must have been written by another author who, for lack of any information about the identity of the author, is simply called the second Isaiah. Kaya may first Isaiah, may second Isaiah, from chapter 40 na siyang binasa natin ngayon until chapter 55. And this author opens his book with an oracle of hope. Ganito yung sinasabi niya, "Comfort, give comfort to my people, says the Lord." They are such tender words, consoling words. They can make you cry. If only you know the background. Itong background, sinakop sila. And their armies fought a fierce fight. Akala nila, kaya nilang itaboy ang mga invaders. And when the Babylonians finally succeeded in defeating the Jews, the whole city was reduced into a pile of ruins. Parang Maynila nung end of World War II. Their temple was totally destroyed. The city walls were demolished. The houses were burned down. And the bodies of women and children littered the streets. And the rest of the citizens were taken as slaves, as captives, to the ancient city of Babylon. Well, just to give you a feel of what the tragic incident meant to the Jewish people, I recommend that one of these days, buksan niyo yung Bible ninyo and take time to read the most heartbreaking psalm in the Old Testament. Tandaan, Psalm 137. Psalm 137. Tandaan ninyo, the saddest, pinakamalungkot na salmo sa buong lumang tipan. It is a very bitter lament, isang panaghoy about the great tragedy of the Babylonian captivity. Kung ipaparaphrase ko ng konti yung sinasabi ng Salmo, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Ang sabi niya, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and wept. We wept whenever we remembered our city of Jerusalem. On the trees growing along their rivers, we hung up our musical instruments. Imagine that. Ayaw nilang kumanta. May mga gitara sila. Isinabit nila sa mga punong kahoy. We hung up our harps. And there in Babylon, our masters asked us to perform one of our native songs for them. But we answered and said to them, Sir, how can we sing a song of our God as captives in a foreign land? If we forget Jerusalem, may our right hands wither. May our tongues be forever silenced if we ever stop remembering Jerusalem. You cannot read that and not weep. And so, you can imagine, if you fast forward 50 years later, what it must have been like when finally they heard consoling words from the prophet who said the exile was finally over, that they could now prepare to return home and to rebuild their country. Ako, sa palagay ko, parang kapareho nung nangyari noong August 15 of 1945. Madalas ikwento ng lola ko. On August 15 of 1945 in the Philippines, ang mga ninuno natin, they gathered around the transistor radios in order to listen to the announcement that the Second World War was ended, that the Japanese had finally surrendered, and that the nightmare of violence was over. But Manila was full of hundreds of thousands of cadavers, dead bodies. Kahapon, on Channel 7, I saw Pau Pau as guest sa Eat Bulaga, sa Bawalang Judgmental. Thank you, sister, for reminding me, because we both know him from Pampanga. He was the boy that I wrote about in one of the stories in one of my books. The boy, Paulo, Pau for short. He was born in prison because his mother was pregnant when she was arrested, along with Pau's grandmother, for an estafa case. Pau Pau should have been taken to the custody of the DSWD as soon as he was born. Pero hindi siya binigay ng mga prisoners because they became very fond of him. Parang naging anak-anakan ng buong prison community. Pau's mother and lola eventually got convicted and got transferred to the National Penitentiary for Women sa Prisión Correccional. And Pau, who was just a little boy, got left behind, still inside the prison in Angeles City. But you know what? The prisoners took good care of him and treated him as their own son and even supported his schooling financially. Patak-patak sila. And yes, he went to school, elementary and high school, outside of jail. Pero umuwi siya sa bilangguan. Yun ang bahay niya. And Pau eventually finished elementary and high school, and he was able to get scholarship at the Holy Angel University for college. He was able to get a degree in education at pumasa siya kagad sa LET, sa board exam, and became a teacher. Pero umuwi pa rin sa bilangguan. Imagine what it must have been like when after more than 20 years of waiting, Pau was told that his mother and his lola were finally free, and now they could live together again as a family. And that's the good news. Teacher na si Pau, may trabaho na siya, and they live together as a family again. Hindi ba good news yon? Our gospel today, katulad ng first reading natin, is also the beginning of a book. The beginning of the Gospel of Saint Mark. But I am inclined to think that Mark wrote the introductory chapter already after he finished the whole gospel. Ako rin naman ganyan magsulat. I write the content, pinakahuli yung introduction. He wrote the beginning in the end. And therefore, he begins by announcing in one line what his good news is about. Ang sabi ng introduction kanina, here begins the good news of Jesus, the Christ, the Son of God. Dalawang titles, the Christ, meaning the Messiah, and the Son of God. Instead of introducing Jesus, he introduces the man who would introduce Jesus, si John the Baptist. And this prophet had become so popular, people thought he was already the Messiah that they had long been waiting for. But John tells them very plainly, hindi daw siya. Ang sabi niya, advance party lang ako ha. I am a messenger of the real good news. John is saying, hindi pa ako ang good news. I am just a messenger of the real good news. And that real good news was no other than Jesus, the one who would redeem his people. John the Baptist came during a time of gloom when Israel found itself in captivity again. Hindi na sa Babylonians, this time under the Romans. And this prophet was the only one who had the courage, ang tapang-tapang niya. He had the courage to stand his ground and to speak out against the abuses around him. Propeta eh. And to his people, he was a little spark of light in darkness. And yet, in all honesty, he told the people that he was not the one that they were waiting for. The one whose way he was preparing was going to be himself the light in darkness. You know, in the third gospel, this is beautifully anticipated. Alin ba ang third gospel? Luke. First gospel, Matthew. Second, Mark. Third, Luke. Fourth, John. In the third gospel, this is anticipated beautifully in the canticle that Saint Luke puts in the mouth of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. Biglang umawit ang pipi. Remember, he was silenced. And then his silence was finally broken when his son, John the Baptist, was born. At sabi niya sa kanyang awit, in the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in darkness, in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. These readings are consistent with the spirit of Advent. They remind me of that song that the seniors among you know. Pero kakaunti lang ang seniors dito. If you're a senior, you probably know this because you know it as a Christmas carol, not realizing that it is not Christmas, a Christmas song, but an Advent song. Binanggit ko ito kahapon in the recollection that I gave, the Advent recollection for the San Roque Cathedral Parish. Nagbigay pa ako ng clue para mahulaan nila yung kanta. Nagbigay ako ng knock-knock joke. Sabi ko, knock-knock, sagot naman sila, who's there? Yung sabi ko, sopas, sagot naman sila, sopas who? Tsaka ako kinanta, sopas the boy, sopa ni Angel. Tingnan ninyo, hindi na matandaan ng mga kabataan dito. Mga matatanda lang ang nakakaalala ng kantang yan. It's a beautiful song. And it says, soft as the voice of an angel, breathing a lesson on earth, soft with a gentle persuasion, whispering comforting words. And then it says, wait till the darkness is over. Wait till the tempest is gone. Hope for the sunshine tomorrow after the shower is gone. At yung refrain niya, whispering hope, whispering hope. Oh, welcome thy voice, making my heart in its sorrow rejoice. May wish ako. And I hope it's not too much of a wish. Marami namang sumusunod dito sa ating online live streaming. Sana marinig ito ng UP Madrigals, o ng Lobok Children Choir, o ng UST Choral. And I imagine what comfort it can be if they can serenade the COVID patients, especially those who are serious in hospitals and in quarantine facilities, kahit by Zoom lang. Let them hear this song. Wait till the darkness is over. Wait till the tempest is done. Hope for the sunshine tomorrow after the shower is gone. Whispering hope. Whispering hope. Oh, welcome thy voice, making my heart in its sorrow rejoice. So many of you are sorrowful, but I have good news for you. You will rejoice because the promise of God will never be broken.
Soft as the voice of an angel, breathing a lesson unheard. Hope with a gentle persuasion whispers a comforting word. Wait till the darkness is over. Wait till the tempest is done. shine to